when the wells run dry and liquid fuel is consigned to the books of history, the world will truly go electric. That day will come, and when it does, there'll be no turning back. But on that day of reckoning, when only the final dregs remain, where will you go? What would you choose to drive? And how would you choose to burn one last tank? Lotus hope you'll do it in this, the Emira, which replaces the company's entire sports car lineup. The successor to the Exige, Elise and Evora, it's Lotus's last roll of the dice before it embarks on an all-electric future.
I guess we better enjoy this one. Oh, the Emira is designed to be Lotus's most complete car ever. It's designed to deliver more quality, better technology, and improved refinement without compromising on all the things that Lotus is famous for: the handling, the performance, the driver involvement. And you know what? On first impressions, I think they've delivered. Meaty steering, agile through the corners, got a manual box, good noise. Yeah, I'm kind of asking myself, are Lotus back? They might be back.
Power comes from a choice of engines. Top spec cars will use the familiar 3.5-litre supercharged Toyota V6 from the Exige and Evora. It will send 400 horsepower to the rear wheels via either an automatic or, in this case, a manual gearbox, and hit 0 to 62 miles an hour in 4.3 seconds. Top speed, 180 miles an hour.
It's a good engine, this. We've seen it so many times from Lotus, but you know what? If it ain't broke, why fix it? From about 3,000 RPM, you keep your foot pinned, and it feels strong. It just pulls towards that red line up towards 7,000 RPM. It's not quite as loud as previous Lotuses, but that's not Lotus's fault. That's more an industry issue. Oh my Lord! But if you have the windows cracked just a little bit, you can hear that glorious supercharger whine and the intake sound. Believe me, it still sounds good.
They'll also offer a less powerful edition that uses a detuned version of the 2-litre 4-cylinder engine from the AMG A45. That will make 360 horsepower and use a dual-clutch gearbox with paddle shifters. I'll go out on a limb and say the V6 is the one to have, most notably because it's available with a manual.
I do like this gearbox as well. 6-speed manual, it's slick, it's precise, always easy to find the gear you want. And the distance between the pedals and the pedal box is bang on as well. It makes it so easy to heel and toe in this car. And like Lotus say, this one is for the drivers. Lotus offer a couple of interchangeable setups with the Emira. When you buy the driver's package, you can choose between road tyre and track tyre. The road tyre is a Goodyear Eagle, the track tyre is a Michelin Pilot Sport Cup 2. You also have a choice of chassis setup, touring or sport. Now, touring has softer suspension designed for the road, and sport is designed more for track use. Plus, you can mix and match. You can have the touring chassis with the touring tyre, ultra soft. You can have the touring chassis with the track tyre for a bit more grip, or you can go for the sport chassis with the road tyre for some reason, or go full hardcore and get yourself what I'm driving today. The sport chassis with the track tyre.
The suspension is firm with no way to adjust it for softness on the fly. Perhaps the touring chassis with the Cup 2s is a sweet spot. It's still worth getting the driver's pack though, because that includes extra goodies, a limited slip differential, and more driving modes, including Tour for laid-back driving, Sport, which is optimized for putting the power down even in damp conditions, and Track, which gives you a bit more play from the car's traction control system. Whichever mode you're in though, the traction and grip levels make it almost idiot-proof.
Of course, you can always switch the systems off completely, and when you do that, this is what happens. Wow. It's not an easy car to slide, the Emira, let me tell you that. But when you get it right, chef's kiss.
But we expect that from a Lotus. What perhaps we don't expect is a sense of quality and style. But the Emira is quite different. Even from the outside, it's a beautifully proportioned car. The influence of the Evija is clear thanks to the cab-forward design, sharp leading edge, intricate bonnet, vertical headlights, and air curtains that channel air into the brakes and wheel arches to relieve temperature and pressure. In profile, its 20-inch wheels give it the proportions of a supercar, with taut lines along its flanks giving it the look of being shrink-wrapped. The Venturi tunnels on the Evija aren't possible on an internal combustion engine car, but the Emira does its best impression with smaller side air intakes, while the rear, with its twin circular exhausts, diffuser, and subtle ducktail spoiler, give it the look of a junior supercar.
We should probably talk about quality as well, because let's face it, that's always been a bit of an Achilles heel with Lotuses. But even though this is what they call a TT, a tooling trial car, and not the final production example, it's actually really good. Everything from the panel gaps to the alignment to the quality of the paint, it's all right actually. And even the way that the doors close with this noise, it kind of speaks to me as being something of fairly decent quality. I like this. On the inside, it's so much nicer than previous Lotuses as well. First of all, you can get into the thing without flashing your knickers, sorry exhibitionists, and without banging your head as well, which is always nice. And then when you get inside, look at the quality of the materials. You got Alcantara on the steering wheel, Alcantara dash, leather, contrasting stitching, screens. Old Lotuses, if you lifted up the mat, you could actually see the glue holding the chassis together, and you could smell it, but this just feels like a much more premium car. There's a couple of really nice details I like in this car. First of all, this exposed gear linkage down here, which is a nice, cool touch. Then you've got two cup holders, decent sized door bins, a little bit of storage down here in the center console. And as for the tech, it's all right. You get KEF speakers, which I tried earlier, and they sound really good. The best speakers in any Lotus that I've ever listened to. And then the main tech, you've got a 12-inch driver display and a 10-inch screen for the infotainment system, and they both work pretty well. If I have one complaint, and Lotus will address this, they have assured me, is that the screen isn't very visible. It's all very black on white, and you can't really see what you're doing. But like I said, they promised they will fix it, and it will come with extra niceties like Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, and all the usual bits and bobs you might expect from a premium system.
As for practicality, well, it's not perfect. There is some storage behind the seats for a couple of small bags and a reasonably small boot, so don't expect to go too far, but I think this is a Lotus you could actually buy and use every single day without too much compromise.
Of course, performance and refinement don't often go hand in hand, and you could argue that by adding that extra refinement, Lotus might have sacrificed a little bit of its performance. It might have actually lost a little bit of what makes the company unique, because the Emira in its lightest form is 1,405 kilograms. That makes it heavier than a Porsche Cayman. It's 200 kilos heavier than an Evora. Essentially, it's a bit like driving a Lotus Exige, but with two fat blokes in your lap. And nobody wants that, believe me. What does that mean for cornering? Well, I keep this one neat and tidy as best I can, and what it means is there's a little bit more inertia, it pushes wide. And Exige, I get the feeling, would have felt a little bit more planted through that. Through the lower speed corners, you can definitely feel that mass, that inertia, and you do have to manage it more than you might with what a Lotus is more lightweight cars. There's decent support in the thighs and in the hips, but up around the shoulder area, you find yourself moving around in your seat. In a road car, it's not really a big deal, but when you're on the track and you're pounding around, you do start to notice it. But despite those gripes, I still think they've done a phenomenal job with this car. The brakes are great, aren't they? It flows so nicely through the corners. Honestly, it's a bloody joy to drive this car. It carries so much speed. And even though it is heavier, with these track tyres in particular, they offer so much grip that they almost mitigate the weight issue. And because it flows so deliciously through the corners, you can forgive the weight. A lot of road cars get exposed when they're on the track, but let me tell you something, the Emira in this configuration is track ready, and more than that, it's an absolute blast to drive.
The big question though is it too little too late? Lotus has already committed to an electric future. They've said in no uncertain terms that petrol power is a dead end. That means at best the Emira is a swan song, a last hurrah, a sending off party for the Lotus we know and love. But at worst, it's a waste of time. And Lotus, at least the Lotus we know, is running on empty.
Fuel's low. Looks like, yep, that is the end of my time. And that's a perfect metaphor, isn't it? Because cars like these are running on empty. They won't be around much longer. I guess the moral of the story is maybe we should enjoy these things while they're still being built, while they're still around.
This is the last of its kind. Combustion engines are over as far as Lotus is concerned. And in a few years, when that last tank of liquid fuel has been burned and the tanks run dry, petrol heads will mourn for a time that was. Me? I'll embrace the future. I'll wait with eagerness to see what the next generation of Lotuses will bring. But until that day, when the wells run dry and the final dregs of fuel remain, maybe the Emira is the perfect opportunity to cherish one last tank.